series of How Can I Help the World Right Now? Here we go. Oh, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cindy. And for those of you who do, welcome. Namaste. Namaste, my lovely friends. I hope you can see me. There we go. Welcome, 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 welcome. So here we are, day 3, which was supposed to be day 4 of our series. Hey Richard, how are you? Welcome. Supposed to be day 4 of our series, but I hurt my back, and that's why we're in a different situation today. I'm not sitting, hey Laverne, welcome. I'm not sitting in my usual spot because I put myself down on my bolster today and it just was hurting almost from the start. So maybe it's the bolster. I don't think so, but it certainly contributes. Hey Robert, thank you so much for your healing energy. Made a big difference. I feel my back feels pretty much back to normal. Thank you for all of you who sent me healing. I really, really appreciate it. And it's so wonderful that as a community we can come together and share from a distance. Energy knows no boundaries of distance and borders, and you know, it's not rooted in the same way that we are. So welcome. Today is, hey Monica, welcome. So today we are going to combine part 3 and part 4 into one. So there's a fair bit to get through. And I also want to read a prayer from this book at the end. So please don't let me forget, because it's really pertinent to what we are talking, well, what we have been talking about for the last few days. Lila, welcome. How are you? How is your kitty cat? Has he made a full recovery? So today we're talking about 2 things. How can I help the world? 1, first of all, looking at all sides of the story. Hey Stacey, welcome. We will start with that, and then we are going to move into staying awake and aware, and how those 2 things will help you to help the world. Luann, welcome. Oh, Lila, that's a shame, but they are on my YouTube channel, so you can watch the replays. So, Lily, welcome. Welcome. I hope you're well, Lily. I hope the weather in Canada is treating you better. No more blizzards. No more blizzards. So we have definitely, in Australia, we have definitely moved into autumn. There is no doubt that summer has completely gone. It went out with a big bang, right? Just flooding us, and now we've got perfect autumn weather. More snow today. Is that an ironic smiley face, or is that a... I know you love the snow, but do you love the snow when it's never ending? I am not a fan of snow, I have to admit. Anyway, so how can I help the world? Starting off with looking at all sides of the story. Looking at all sides of the story. So, a little while ago, I was talking with some ladies, and one of them mentioned that during the Trump elections, during the Trump era, she made sure that she got her news from both CNN and somebody else. I can't remember what the other channel was, because one news channel reported pro-Trump, and one news channel reported, I think it was pro-Hillary at that point. And I thought that was really, really interesting, that in the US you have such a divide between your press, that if you want to if you are of a particular camp, you Fox was pro-Trump, and then I'm imagining CNN was pro-Hillary at that point. So, and then Biden after that. So I just find that really interesting. And it's actually a theme that is carried out wherever you go. Harmonica, we are going to address that. We are going to address Fox is bad, because we are looking at all sides of the story. The thing is, even on social media, you can wrap yourself up in a little bubble where all the people reflect back to you exactly your paradigm, exactly what you believe. It is opinionated talking heads, right, Lila? And we're starting to see that in Australia as well. So we can completely surround ourselves in whatever opinion we want to believe, okay? But what that leads to is more polarization. And I'm sure we all agree that part of the problem in our world right now is the fact that we are so polarized. We believe this, they believe that, and then we have this we and they mentality. When in fact, remember in our first session, we all actually want the same thing. Hey Annette, welcome. There really isn't that much difference between us. And whether you are, I don't know, is it right wing, left wing? I'm really not into politics. Even that, so much of those things that we believe are things that have been passed down to us from family, from the people that we grew up with. And as we grow into adulthood, it is our responsibility to discover what it is that we actually believe. Do I actually believe that that it's okay to be racist? Do I actually believe that people who don't look like me are less than me? Do I actually believe that money is evil? Do I actually believe that rich people are evil? Do I believe that we are nature? Or do I believe that nature is something that needs to be subjugated? Hey Flo, welcome! So it is our responsibility. The older we get, the more mature we get, the more experiences we have, the more life we live, it is our responsibility to decide for ourselves what we do believe, what is true for us. How can we do that if we continue to only look at one point of view? Now, sometimes it is even interesting, it is important, even when you know that you absolutely know that you do not agree with the other person's point of view. How can we find any common ground? How can we find any ability to have discourse, to have conversation with each other, to not be split along lines of discord and hatred if we aren't able to even engage with the other person and to even know what their point of view is? Why do they feel that way? Why do they feel that way? Why is it? Why is it that that person feels that Trump is a good president or could be a good president? If you are so far over here thinking to yourself, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, and you don't even have enough space to wonder, why do they feel like that? Then how can you even begin to maybe show them a different perspective or engage with them? Hi, Magpie. So, getting your news, and one of my Moon Circle ladies told me about this. She had COVID, long haul COVID, spent a lot of time at home, and set herself a rule that she was going to get her news from as many different sources as she could so that she wasn't just stuck in one paradigm, because she's at home, she can't talk to other people, she's got no other channels of input. So she took it beyond watching CNN or Fox in her own nation. Hey Sarah, welcome. She watched BBC, as Lila has mentioned. She watched BBC. She watched Al Jazeera. She watched every kind of international news source that she could get, so that she could get different perspectives. Because you are looking at the world through your own perspective, your own lens, right? So imagine Al Jazeera News reports international news from a very international viewpoint. So how do you know what is actually going on in the hearts of the Syrian people if you're watching it from a Western perspective? Because they live a completely different life from us. So imagine getting your news about Syria from a Syrian reporter, or getting your news from the Ukraine at the moment from a Ukrainian person. Completely different perspective, right? I watched I can't even remember where I saw it. I watched a Ukrainian young woman who was part of the resistance, talking about what her everyday life is like under the invasion. And one of the things that she said that was part of her job as a resistance member was to discover fake news about the invasion within the Ukraine and counter that. Actually speak the truth in relation to fake stories that were coming up through Ukraine. So, and to me, that was like, you have fake news in the middle of a war zone? But of course you do, because there's whispers and innuendo, and I heard this, Chinese whispers. Somebody says, I saw a Russian person do this, and then by the time that's travelled around the nation, it's a completely different story, right? So then it becomes fake news. So her job was to decipher what was real and what wasn't, so that she could say, the resistance could tell this is exactly what's happening. Even that piece of information to me was like, wow, I can't believe everything that is coming out of even social media from Ukraine, because that's still people's perspectives. What does that teach us? What did that teach me? Don't jump to conclusions. Don't get angry. Don't immediately react to things. Don't go, there's so many really icky things on social media about things that Ukrainian people are doing. And so instead of reacting to that, it was take a step back. Think about it. Why might this be happening? Inquire, is this actually true? And we can do that in our own nations when we hear of somebody being called a terrorist in your nation. Don't just immediately react, oh my God, they're a terrorist, they're evil, they're horrible. Is there another perspective? Is this a paradigm? Is somebody trying to direct and manipulate my emotions to get a particular reaction out of me to cause more discord and dissent in my society? Because we know that those forces are at play, right? Playing telephone, exactly, Flo. Yes, I agree with you on leaving Facebook, Flo. Me too. I no longer go on Facebook. But unfortunately it leaks in everywhere. It's everywhere. People, how bad was it during COVID? We really should have learned our lesson from COVID. I heard this, I heard that, I heard this, I heard that. All the misinformation, right? IT is your social media. It's an amazing, amazing place for your to get your social media fix. Exactly, Sarah. Exactly. Well, this is Richard has asked, what do you do when each side says the other side is lying? There's no place to find the truth. So this is why you look at all avenues, because this is a reaction. They're lying. And then the other side reacts. They're lying. And it escalates and escalates and escalates. And then we find ourselves in one camp or the other. But if you look at that, some things you can immediately go, well, that's a lie. Immediately. You don't need to do research. You don't need to look at other people's perspectives. You can just say, that is a lie. But then sometimes from your own camp, the lies are coming. Right? Sometimes from your own camp, which is why we are responsible to find the truth for ourselves, so that we don't become polarized in these. What did you use? You used the word each side. The magic word is side. Okay, what are the subject experts saying about this topic? Beautiful, Sarah. The experts. Human side, exactly, Flo. And if you're on human side, then you need to be aware of all sides of the story. So, we're taking responsibility for our own education, views and standpoints. Now, there comes a time when you need to pick a side. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Let's go back to during the time of segregation in the US. At that time, you needed to take a stand. You were either pro-segregation or you were anti-segregation. And there are times when you need to take a stand because you know that something is wrong. Right now, the way the media works, the way social media works, the way our connectivity, which is good on one side and not so good on the other, works, is that we are creating divisions and sides around things that we have no place having a side or a division on. Like Flo said, we need to be on humanity's side. And the only way we can do that is to listen to both sides and then draw our conclusions. So, what I'm trying to say is don't be led or manipulated. We see things on the... I'll give you a really extreme thing. So, I'm kind of cynical about the press now, okay? Because a lot of it is opinion stuff. Now, the news channel that I watch is the International. You're finally understanding how powerful propaganda is. Exactly, Magpie. Exactly, Flo. What about when you can't believe the experts? Okay, so Lila, you know what you do? You go and you see what are the experts saying, and then you realize, okay, the experts aren't following what science is saying. What is the science saying? And then you make your own opinion about that, right? So in Australia right now, we are being told that COVID is fine. There's no problem. We are being told that Omicron is mild. How many of you have heard that? Omicron is mild. And yet you watch the news and you look at the amount of people who are actually dying from Omicron and you say, how can that be mild? Our government a few months ago our state government was telling us that COVID is no longer a threat or a problem, yet our numbers were going through the roof, and they were doing things like they were saying that today 20 people died, and then 2 weeks later they were saying, oh, so-and-so, the Department of Births and Marriages have made a mistake and actually 40 people died in that reporting period. And then just moving on. So if you are not actually doing your own research and taking responsibility for yourself, you would say, oh, that naughty Department of Births and Marriages not getting that right. And it's so mild. But what that means actually is that 60 people died in that time. That is not a mild variant, is it? If 60 people are dying in, I think it was the space of a week. So then the experts are saying it's mild. The government is saying you have nothing to worry about. But you are saying, I need to wear my face mask because this is not mild. You are taking personal responsibility for not sharing COVID and not catching COVID, okay? Interesting, Magpie. And you've had all 3 jabs. It is up to you to take responsibility for the decisions you make. Listen to more than one news source. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't sit there passively watching the news. Passively, okay? Because passively would have you running around not caring about the new COVID strain. Sitting around passively would have you shaking your fist at Putin without knowing, well, look, we all need to shake our fist at Putin. What he is doing is completely wrong. But if we were to just sit and passively listen to the news, then we would say, Putin is really bad, but everything that we do is really good. And we know that that's really not true. Because there's more than one side to the story, okay? Right at the beginning of COVID, I'll give you a good example. Right at the beginning of COVID, when it was in Asian nations, but not yet in Australia, our government was telling us, you've got nothing to worry about. And our SBS news, our international news, was telling us what the government was saying, you've got nothing to worry about. And then they were clever reporting, and then they were showing people in full head to toe hazmat suits spraying disinfectant on the street. If I had been passively watching that, I would have said, you've got nothing to worry about. But I think Asia has a problem. And that was it. Instead, I was going, oh, they're saying this, but then look what's actually happening on the street. I need to take precautions. Before our borders were even shut, my family and I were already taking precautions against COVID. Ah, Sarah, that's interesting. The nuances of statistics. Actually, that reminds me of a quote that I heard. I can't remember, and it's not actually relevant to what we're talking about, but the word nuance is very important. Okay, don't be led or manipulated. Now, when I say to you, get lots of different news sources, one of the places where I get wowzers, okay. One of the places that I get my news from is Russell Brand. Now, that sounds completely cuckoo, doesn't it? But let me tell you something. If you want to hear about almost unbiased news, go and find his news channel. He takes a lot of, he shows you a different perspective, basically. He takes a lot of what is happening in all around the world, news stories from all around the world, and shows a different perspective which allows you to make your own decisions. Now, I do not believe every point of view that he comes across with, but he makes me think. Another person who makes me think, okay? What I will say to that too is be mindful of your own triggers and belief systems. When Russell is talking about the Canadian government, I can sit there and go, oh yes, how naughty that man, that Trudeau, oh my goodness. When he talks about the English government, I'm like, oh gosh, how corrupt can you get, the horror. When he talks about the American government, I'm like, oh, tut, tut, tut. And then he talks about my government, and I'm like, oh no, how dare you? You are crossing a line. And then when I do that, I think to myself, why though? Why? Why is everybody else's government naughty and corrupt, but mine is perfect? So then I force myself to listen to what he has to say. Sometimes he completely opens my eyes to things that are happening in my own country, or he makes me, he spurs me on to go and do research about certain government policies in my country that maybe don't sit well with me, that maybe are more, well, they don't really serve our nation. Sometimes I just say, no, you're wrong. My government did the right thing. You're not here in my nation, living here, feeling this. So when I say take responsibility, I'm not saying just absorb everything. I'm saying listen to many different perspectives and then decide for yourself. Is what I believe right? Is what I'm hearing right? Am I so far insulated that I cannot meet the other person halfway? Can I not engage in conversation with other people? We need to be aware and alert, because there is no, right back at you, Maisha, because there is no, how can I put this? There are lots of narratives and lots of stories being told because we have become such a polarized society. In order to not sit on either side, in order to be able to be on the side of humanity, as Flo so beautifully put it, we need to hear every side of the story. We need to be aware, and we need to perhaps try to understand why that person is feeling non-violent communication. Beautiful, Robert. We need to be maybe aware of why that person might be feeling that way. Why they're so full of that hatred. Yeah? Or full of, why do they believe that and nothing else? So I'm just going to leave you with one question before I move on. Exactly, Flora. I'm going to leave you with one question. Do you all know, and I'm not casting any judgments, okay? I'm just asking you something. Do you know what NATO is? Do you actually know what NATO is? I had no idea what NATO actually was. I just, in my opinion, namaste Flo, thank you so much for your donation. In my opinion, NATO were the good guys and Russia was the bad guy. That was it. Aha, you're confused about NATO. So, I had no idea. I just knew that there was some kind of alliance, that Australia was, I assumed that Australia was part of that alliance and that they were all the good guys. Right? Right, interesting, Sarah. But then I heard something about NATO that was like, oh, really? So I went and did research. Now, I still believe that NATO are the good guys. But, and that's all I'm going to say because I'm not going to give you my opinion. Do not accept things at surface value. Exactly, Vicky. Exactly, Flo. Do not just sleepwalk your way through this time. We need to be awake. Yeah. We need to be awake. Go and find all aspects of the story, all sides of the story. If I hadn't have bothered to go and research what NATO was, if I would have just gone, oh, they're the good guys, which is passive watching, passive non-engagement almost with life, I just wouldn't have been as educated as I am, and maybe perhaps not able to understand the whole situation that we find ourselves in right now. Sarah, beautiful. Be critical thinkers. Exactly, Michelle. Well, Monica, go after this live, go and do some research on NATO. It's not all bad, okay? It's not all bad. But just be educated. Be educated. Don't just be passive. Okay. Oh, my final note. Understanding that there is grey in every situation. There is grey in every situation. So, a black and white situation is racism is wrong. That is a black and white situation. Putin attacking Ukraine, invading Ukraine, that is a black and white situation. That is wrong, and that is wrong, right? But leading up to these black and white situations, there is grey. There is grey. There is always grey in every situation. Be informed. Be informed. Life isn't really like that. Exactly, Sarah. We want things to be easy and straightforward. And that is why we sit passively and watch the news and allow them to tell us what's right and what's wrong. We allow them to tell us that that's the bad guy, we're the good guys. And we allow that to happen. You know, there is a particular news channel here in Australia that is really very sensationalist. And it has a very distinctive jingle. And when I live in an apartment block, right? And in the evening when the weather's nice, everyone has their doors open and we can hear the news and we know, okay, that person's watching that news. And when I hear that particular jingle from that news, I immediately go, oh, okay, there's someone who is just passively accepting what they're being told. And I tell you, I know who those people are. They are always the much older people who did not grow up in a time that we find ourselves in now. They grew up in a time when the news told you the news. This is what happened, without opinion pieces, or they told you the facts. Today, blah, blah, blah said and did, blah, blah, blah. And now moving on to blah, 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 right? We don't get that sort of news anymore. We get very coloured news, you know, coloured by whatever agenda that news channel has. And they speak to their demographics, don't they? So the news that I watch is very, I get a lot of what's happening in the world. I get a lot of, they come from a very, we get lots and lots of stories about transgender people. The newsreader, the head newsreader is an Indigenous woman. The head finance reporter is a Hispanic gay man, right? So it's very inclusive. And then the other news that we watch is our equivalent of the BBC, I guess, which is, but it's very state-based. So if I want to know what is happening in my state, I will watch that news because it tells me in Queensland today. And then if I want the world news, I watch what we call SBS News. And then there are other news channels that are for different demographics. I am very much the demographic for the news, where the newscaster looks like me. She's got skin tone like me, right? News has become entertainment. Well, Michelle, it's great, but you still need to take it all with a grain of salt. You still need to go and do your own research. You watch BBC too. I like watching the headlines on YouTube from BBC. I just read the headlines and that gives me enough of an idea of what's happening without actually engaging in all the horror. Is that a book? Is that a book or something that you're recommending, Robert? So, moving on now. Stay awake and aware. Let me have a sip of tea. Yes. Okay, good. Thank you, everyone. There's a very good book for us to read. Did I bring a pen? Yes. Non-violent. Thank you, Robert. Okay. Exactly. It's a business. It's a business. That's exactly what news has become. A business. Okay. Okay. Take responsibility for where you get your news from. Don't be passive. This is not a time for passivity. This is not a time to just accept what's on surface value. This is a time to discover what it is that you believe. Us being passive has contributed to where we are now. Us sitting back and being passive and allowing Facebook to do what Facebook does, and allowing big business to do what big business does, has led us to this position now. Okay, we have our own part to play now. Well, no, you were passive flow, not anymore. All right, so my next thing, stay awake and aware. Be aware of what is going on around you in your situation. This is another thing about not being passive. I'll tell you a story, okay? I love my stories. I'm sweating. So we had the floods recently. Now, the floods did not turn up like, oh look, here's a flood. That wasn't the way it happened. The floods were, we knew that there was a possibility that there may be heavy rains weeks ahead of time. And then it started raining, and it rained for days. So this is my husband and I. Yes, Sarah, we have personally we have, there's still a long road of recovery for our nation, a very long road. So this is our second flood. So the thing about where we live is that it's not like suddenly it flooded. If it suddenly flooded in a place like South Australia, which is it's on the edge of the desert, if there was suddenly a flood there, and people said, "Oh, it was so random, I had no idea," I would say, "Yeah, right, absolutely, I would believe that." But in Queensland, we flood. This is what happens. So, and we tend to do it every 10 years or so. So we were actually due for a flood. So anyway, the rain is pouring, and I said to my husband, it's going to flood. So we went and, made sure that we had candles. We made sure that we had torches. We made sure that we had food. We did everything necessary so that we were okay. And then about a day before it was really bucketing, before we knew it was really going to flood and it was really raining, and I can't remember, I think I spoke to you about this, Richard. I was unwell or something. There was something. I remember I did not want to leave the house, and my husband forced me to leave the house to go and get, I think I just didn't want to go out in the rain because I was so sick of it. Forced me to go out to get, it had already started flooding, that's right. It had already, the CAD, I know, it had already started flooding. And he actually, it was a good thing because, I can be a hermit. He forced me to go outside to get fresh food. He drove me to the shops and we went together to get fresh fruit and vegetables because I'm a Brazilian, I must have my fresh fruit. So we went and we got fresh food, and then the next day it completely flooded and there was no leaving the house for like 3 or 4 days. It was, you just did not leave the house. So he got me out of my hermit blurness and made sure that we had fresh fruit and veggies in the house. Now the day of the flood, our basement started flooding because we lost power. And my neighbour walked past. Everybody is frantically downstairs trying to save everyone's stuff and cars downstairs by pumping out with generators, and it was wild. My neighbour says, "Oh, I've got no food in the house. I don't know what I'm going to do." I remember, excuse me for being so judgy, I was like, "Are you mad? We knew that this was coming. How could you not have gone out and gotten some fruit and fresh veggies and food in your house to last you for a few days at least. Passive. Just being passive. We can't be passive. We need to be aware. We need to be awake to what is going on around us. If the weather man is telling you, hey, the weather is going to be bad, and it starts raining for a week, do you have candles? Do you have food that you can prepare if the power goes out? Do you have enough gas in your barbecue? Are you ready? Okay, Sea Flo, have a lovely evening. Say hello to Mrs. Flo. Bye, Jason. Plan ahead. Stay awake. Be aware of what's going on around you. We are being given a lot of advance notice about what is coming up. And because there are always going to be people around you who are passive, there are always going to be people around you who don't think to go out and get fresh fruit and vegetables when the city is about to flood, and there's a good possibility you're not leaving your house for 3 days. Because of that, make sure that you've got enough to share. Make sure that you have got enough to give the people around you who aren't as awake and aware as you are. That is how you can be a light in the world. That is how you can lift and help the world. Sarah. Right, pandemic stash. Pandemic stash. But actually on that, Sarah, who's still having supply chain issues at their place? I certainly am. So what does that mean? Does that mean that I just, right, Vicky still is. Does that mean I just cross my fingers and hope? I really hope that they'll get these supply chain issues sorted. KFC ran out of KFC? Actually, no, I shouldn't laugh at that because KFC has run out of chicken here on more than one occasion too. Wow. There you go. You can't really stock up on KFC. But shouldn't you maybe just be aware that possibly these supply chain issues could last a little bit longer? Go get a little bit extra. I'm not saying go on a mad hoard. Do not do that. If you go to the supermarket and there are 4 tins of beans, buy 2. Leave 2 for somebody else. Don't hoard. Yes, Michelle, absolutely, absolutely. Now, do we know what products, other than oil, because we all know that Russia makes oil, but what else does Russia supply to the world? Do we know? What does Ukraine supply to the world? Do you know what the Ukraine actually grows? Do you know that the Ukraine has an amazing like IT industry? Do you know that so many of your apps are made by Ukrainians? Did you know that? Oh, Sarah. Sarah has written that she was tempted to ask the KFC server if the chickens came from Ukraine. The metals that are used in electronics, fertilizer, lithium. What else? Do they grow food? Have we researched that? What else could be in short supply? We can't just be passive. We need to know. They grow wheat. Doesn't Russia grow wheat? Right. So what are you doing about your food security? What are you personally doing about your food security? And again, I don't mean hoarding. Please, Please, no hoarding. Oh. But definitely prepare. I think I told you in my last chat with you, I went to the shop. I might buy 2 tins of tomatoes every week. I bought 4. But I have just prepared a whole bunch of garden beds so that I have food. My neighbours will have food. I've got more garden beds out there than I will need, and that's a good thing because I want my neighbours to know that they can come to me for food as well. Beautiful magpie. Gardening. Aha, there you go, Robert. The richest soils. The Ukraine. Why? So here's an interesting thing. Why would you even bother to attack a country like Ukraine? Why? Isn't it, Michelle? Growing your own food is good for your mental health. It's good for the earth. It's good for, obviously, for your belly, for your spiritual health, for everything. Exactly, Sarah. Can you donate and be so that other agencies are prepared when the people start turning up? I have no food. Can you take some of your wealth and abundance and donate to a food bank? We have many food banks in Australia. We do a really good job of feeding our people. Really, Vicky? Communism versus democracy? Look a bit deeper. That might be some of it. Scratch a little bit deeper. So, beautiful magpie. Beautiful. So be awake and aware. Don't fall asleep. The other thing I want to ask you to do is to look for patterns. Look for patterns. When this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. Because if you look to the past, you can pretty much predict what's happening, what's going to happen. Okay, Vicky, beautiful. Like COVID rates, Monica, exactly. When this happens in the COVID rates, this and this happens. When the price of oil goes up, this and this happens. So when they start telling you about COVID rates, we know we have patterns in Australia where we know the COVID rate goes up and then it goes down for a little while, and we know that when it goes down, we know that there's a reason why it's going down, and then the pattern is, boom, up it goes again. So when it's going down, instead of going, yay, COVID's finished, and we all go outside, we go, oh, now's the time to be even more careful. Because people act in certain ways, and because there's a pattern. Now, I don't know about you, and I think this is part of my empathic ability, is that I'm really good at noticing patterns. I can notice patterns down to the things like, depending on how many times my neighbour walks past the front door, I know that's something is happening and she's going to turn up at my doorstep in a few days. Do you know what I mean? We work in patterns. My gift is that I can see patterns. Does anybody else have that gift? Yes, right. Pay attention. When you are awake and aware, you can pay attention to what's going on. You can notice patterns. And then you can prepare yourself for what you know is coming down the line. Okay? That is it. Finish with the prayer. Be awake, be aware. Don't stay stuck in your own paradigm. Find your news from as many different sources. Now, I mentioned Russell Brand earlier. The reason why I also like Russell Brand is because he goes out and finds his team finds even more sources that I wouldn't even think of, and then he reports on what this person said, this person said that, this person said this, and then he takes the news today, what happened today, and my pleasure, Monica, and he takes it back to, but then 3 years ago this person did this, which kind of, can you see that it led to this point? Very educational. And he talks about institutions that we take for granted. Institutions that we just go, oh yeah, of course they're going to do the good thing, and maybe not so much their own agenda. You used to believe everyone saw them as well, Robert. Me too. I used to get really like, why can't you see that? And get really frustrated about it. Good, Sarah, I'm glad. And then somebody was actually a prophet at the church that I used to go to, who actually told me, you need to stop thinking that everybody thinks and sees things the way you do. And so now I just, they can't see the pattern, but I can. And so I can preempt things. Sometimes I can even preempt things for other people because I can see their behaviour, right? Ah, beautiful, love. Namaste, Vicky. Thank you so much for your donation. If you pay attention, you will see that you can notice patterns. You can notice your own patterns. It's a beautiful way to stay mindful too. You can notice your own patterns. Oh, gee, today I've drunk, more cups of tea than normal. Am I feeling nervous? Just stuff. You'll just notice your own patterns. Okay, beautiful. I want to read from this book, Prayers of Honouring Voice. And it's funny because I've been thinking, my process is I start thinking about things days beforehand, and then it builds. And I've been thinking I need to find a prayer for us from this book. This is Pixie Lighthorse. Can you see that down the bottom? Yes, Vicky, absolutely. She's a Native American, and she writes beautiful things. So, I've been thinking for about a few days, I absolutely need to get a poem. It's a great book, isn't it, Robert? I've read from it for you before. Anyway, this morning I was like, right, I'm going to find the poem that I need to, the prayer that I need to read. And I opened the page and I read that and went, oh, that's it. Spirit told me this is what we need to hear. So listen. Honouring advocacy. I hope I said that right. Thank you for this day of progressive perception. Help me speak out for justice with a special desire fueled by a power greater than surface comforts and outdated systems. Let me be a troublemaker to champion those I love and care for, and for those I don't know intimately who need my help. Hire me to be a powerful voice for the change that heals, reconciles, forgives, and improves. Help me create time and space to lend support where it is needed. Rigorously stir my passion to be deeply bothered by violations to life, liberation, happiness, and voice. Find me faithful and in service, riding shotgun to heart-led movements, and leading the charge when it's up to me to do so. Remove my feelings of hopelessness in who I perceive to be the opposition. I'm going to read that line again. Remove my feelings of hopelessness in who I perceive to be the opposition. Align me with action and channel my energy for others. Bind me to the medicine of love. Bind me to the medicine of love. Let me effect the transformation that leads to needed change. Like the torch of revolution in my heart, stand me upright on a foundation of faith while I take the next steps. Build my voice as an instrument for defending freedoms which provide equality. Keep my motivations clean. Grant me the tools to see near and far, and adjust my lens often. Help me give a leg up to the underdog and root for the one who doesn't stand a chance. Help me accept being unliked or misunderstood for positioning myself behind who and what I believe in. Bolster my confidence and give me the understanding and empathy required for sustainable action. Make tolerance my priority. And give me the words to fight violence with the sword of peace. Right, Magpie? Make tolerance my priority and give me the words to fight violence with the sword of peace. Orient me to inclusivity. Help me stop putting individuals into dualistic opposition. Rather focus me on repairing mistakes and my participation in them. Dissolve my tendencies for cliques. Dissolve my tendencies for cliques, partisanship, judgment, righteousness, bandwagons, and the damning or idolizing of those I perceive to have more than me. Help me do my part to clang the bells of freedom. And this is, when 10,000 are whispering, make me one who is listening. When 10,000 are whispering, make me one who is listening. Done. Right, Monica? I read that and just thought, well, that is exactly what we are talking about here. Yeah, spot on. Spot on. Right, Vicky? Listen. We all just want to be heard. How many times have I been told in the groups that I facilitate that it is so wonderful to just be able to sit, speak from our hearts, and listen, and be heard, have people listen. So many times. In my groups, my moon circles, my empath circles, that is our number one thing. We may not agree with each other exactly there. We may not agree with each other, but we listen and hold each other in love. And sometimes just in listening to ourselves speak without being judged, we understand, yeah, maybe I'm not right in that. Maybe I need to go and investigate that further. Sometimes we heal ourselves just in saying it. We think, oh, I can see what I need to do. I can see where I need to heal something in that. And sometimes in listening to someone's opinion that we don't necessarily agree with it, but we understand more about that person. We have more compassion in our hearts for that person. We understand why, maybe. Yeah? Absolutely. Good. All right. Well, that is the end of the series. I really it was so on my heart to share this with you. After the floods, and I was sitting at home and brooding, and everything was going on in the Ukraine as well. Yes, Magpie. Prayers of Honouring Voice by Pixie Lighthorse. So I hope it's helped you. My pleasure. I hope it has helped you. I hope it's spurs you on to action. Awesome, Vicky. The last thing we need is more polarizing, more passive people. Yeah? Been saying all year last year that our time as empaths was coming. And here it is. We can't be passive. We can't be passive. Awesome, Magpie. Good, good. So my next live is we're just going to the Reiki lake, and we are going to receive love. We're going to take some time to open our hearts and to just receive love, because we need our open hearts right now. Oh, really, Vicky? Oh, that makes me feel good. Awesome. Awesome. That meditation just poured out of me. I don't think I even, normally I write things. That one just was like, ooh, here it is. Awesome, Sarah. I'm looking forward to spending time with you again. So, take extra good care of yourselves. There was something else that I wanted to say to you. Can't remember now. Awesome, Vicky. Thank you. Beautiful feedback. Prayers of honouring voice. Pixie light voice. Absolutely. There was something else that I wanted to say to you, but now I can't remember. It'll come to me and I'll pop it into the group. So take really, oh yes, extra self-care. Take extra self-care, extra. Okay? Extra, because times are wild and crazy. So if you're going to keep your heart open and stand in the midst and be awake and aware, that means you need to spend more time letting that energy pass through you and move on so that you can stay clean and clear. Okay? The name of my circle is the Namaste Collective, Vicky, and we would love to have you there. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Keep your hearts open. Goodbye for now. Namaste. Take care. Namaste, YouTube. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end.